So guys, we are going to speak about the God I want. And it's an interesting topic this morning. I'm excited about it. And the concept about the God I want is looking at the world today, looking at church today, looking at the lives of Christians. It's easy to see that we try and form Jesus who we want him to be. The church, we want to form the church to what we want the church to be. So if you could create your own God, if you could form him, shape him exactly into the God that you wanted him to be, how would you create him to look like? And what would he be? How would he be? And what would he do for you today? It made me think like the old genie, rubbing the lamp, and the genie comes out and he gives you 3 wishes, whatever you want. And it's as if we treat God like that. We want to use him for what we want, and we'll rub the lamp. God will come and we'll tell him, this is what I need. This is what I want. So like this genie, we treat God. As Christians, we would change the laws pretty quickly. We would delete whole sections of the word. So listen to these 4 points. We would change the laws quite quickly. We would delete whole sections of the word that doesn't fit us. Or we would add to the word things that are not there. So think about it. We see it a lot. So why do we see it? Because it doesn't fit the analogy. It doesn't fit the narrative. Or we would manipulate and change the word to fit our narrative. So all of these things, these forms of church that we see that is not in line with the word, all the teachings that we hear, all the mannerisms that we see, is all because of what we want. So we change it, we manipulate it, we form it to suit our needs and our wants, right? I this week saw on the internet a video clip that went viral about a preacher in America, quite famous worship leader or preacher. He's got almost 3 million followers on Facebook. And looking at this guy, he was on the stage and they just finished worshiping, and he was also in charge of getting the funds for the conference. So what he did is he said, close all the doors. He commanded these ushers to close the doors, and he commanded everybody to give $20. There's a few thousand people in the arena, and there's 1,000 people online, and he speaks to them, and he forces everybody to give $20. And everybody on the stage and the whole choir, he turns around and says, each of you needs to give $100 right now. It's going to cost you something to be on this stage. And so we can use the body to get what we want. And to speak straight to you this morning, we call it rape. When you use a body against its will, or use it for your own gain against that body's will. And so we use the body to get what we want. And I know it's a bit of an extreme example, but when I saw it yesterday, I thought I just want to mention it, like money and how we work with money in the church. It's a lust, it's a desire, it's greed that we have to, it's something that we want to fulfill in our lives. So I guess we would change the gospel in the church very quickly into something a lot more fun and digestible for us. Something that meets our needs and our wants. Imagine no commands and no demands. Wouldn't that be lovely? What a lovely gospel that would be. No demands and no commands. And the funny thing is, we live as Christians, we live in a way as if there is no command. As if there's no demand on your life. But he requires everything. He asks of you everything. But we live a life of where we choose how we will fulfill this gospel. Like in John 13:34, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You are also to love one another. So true love is manifested on the earth in some action. There must be some practical way of seeing that what you say is true in your heart. So God commands us and He says, love one another in such a way that people, when they look at you, that they will say that you are my disciples. And so, no commands, no demands, but Jesus says, I command you to love one another. Or in Mark 16 verse 15, He says, and He said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. What do we call that? The Great Commission. It's a tall order. It's an impossible task, right? Without Him, without His Spirit in us. But still He sends us into this dark world. He sends us into a place that when we look at it, we shiver and crawl into our hideouts. It's a daunting task. It's a challenge that should give you goosebumps to look at this world, look at the darkness of it, the lostness of it, the liberal mindset that we face today, what's going on in the universities and the schools. It should give you goosebumps and a shiver down your spine. But God gives us His Spirit, He gives us His power, and He commands us, He says, go. He clearly says, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all of creation, to all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And He says, go and teach them. And then He says at the end of Matthew, the last verse, and I will be with you. He will not leave us. He will not forsake us. Or he says in Hebrews 13, verse 17, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. God gives us structure, He gives us authority in our lives, in your family, where you work, in your church, for a good reason. But we are in a rebellious generation, where nobody listens to nobody, especially the young generation. They listen only to themselves. It's only about me, myself, and I. It's about what I want. Who are you to tell me what I need? And they shun all wisdom, all experience that they should be drawing from. It's almost like that saying that says, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, or to do it again, to fall for the same problems, same issues, same tricks that the enemy will bring your way. Listen, these commands are there for a good reason, and it's to get you to look like Him. It's to get you to be saved at the end of your life. It is not there to put you in prison. It frees you to walk in the commandments of Jesus. It sets you free. How many of us sitting here has been set free by Jesus? Has been set free from demonic bondage, enslaved by sin, sitting in cycles in our lives, going through it over and over and over again. Looking at our fathers and saying, that's me. I'm going to be like my father. You know, you're going to be just like your mother. You're just like your mother. You're just like your father. Look at your grandfather. You're just like him. And the enemy comes and he accuses you and he plants these seeds, and you eventually tell yourself, I'll just be like my father. I'll just go the same route. I mean, it's genes, right? It's not. It is not. God's genes is what you need, and God will change you. He will break you out of the cycles of pain, demonic curses on your family bloodline. These commands that He gives us sets us free. Love one another as I have loved you. Do you know it sets you free to love people? So in the one side, we would think by ourselves, a gospel with no commands and no demands. Oh, lovely. How wonderful. But I can guarantee you, at the end of that road, you will not enter the gates of heaven. I can guarantee you that. We would make the gospel very accommodating, easy, quick, not time-consuming, no sacrifice needed on my terms. Now, again, if we look at the generation, quick and easy, fast. You know, everything is, how many of us actually takes time to cook healthy meals? No, we rather drive down the road to McDonald's. Quick fix. Doesn't take much time. It's easy, it's fast. Everything we do. If your internet hangs, immediately frustrated. You can't believe it, the slow internet. You know, it needs to work. Why is it not working? Sitting in church, oh man, this worship, oh, that song was horrible. I'm leaving church. I'm going to look for, you know, anything that's not in your category of comfortability and easiness, you move, you shift, you change. And so nobody really matures. Nobody becomes mature in one thing. They move all the time. We really become a jack of all trades. So by the way, I just made a note here. Have you heard of the seeker-sensitive church, seeker-friendly church, the attractional church? So that's a word that's not really old, say 20, 30 years. And that is a church model where we accommodate the world in becoming so much like them that we attract them into the church. In the meantime, compromise on the true word of God. And so to keep them there, you need to bring your voice down. You need to dial the seriousness of the gospel a little bit down. You can't really give them solid meat because they will leave. And so eventually the culture becomes a culture of milk, and you have a bunch of babies being fed every Sunday, and 6 days of the week they are lost. Still bound in their sin, still bound in demonic cycles. And so to try and form the church to look like us will end up in a Christianity that does not know Jesus. It's not a judgmental thing to say, it's truth. If we don't face it as a fact today, we will lose this generation. How can we disciple a person on milk? It's malnutrition, you'll die of just getting milk all the time. You need to grow, you need to mature in your Christianity. No commitment expected. The expectation is really low. Just be at church. Just be Sunday at church. That's enough. Where were you Sunday? Where were you Sunday? I didn't see you. But in the week, there's no relationship. There's no discipleship. So what's it worth to you sitting on a Sunday in a church, but you are not changing, you are not maturing? So we find a church that has been compromised to try and look like the world, and in the meantime, nobody's truly deeply discipled. A mile wide, but an inch deep, right? An inch deep. So, or you can choose to go deep and a bit more narrower, a bit smaller, maar dieper. And if we really hover on this concept of models of church, if you have 5,000 people and nobody's truly deeply discipled, and you have a church of 150 people, but there's 3 Pauls discipled, truly discipled, I can guarantee you the 3 Pauls will do more in their lifetime as 5,000 people in a shallow pool. And that is what we don't understand today. We measure success by numbers and not by depth. And in the New Testament, we see the disciples measuring success by how many people have we discipled and released into the world to do the same. Think about your friends. Think about your Christian friends. How many of them are busy discipling people? Real question. Think about it. How many of your friends, your Christian friends, are truly discipling people? And that should give you the answer and the success of church today. Because my sole job as a minister of God is to disciple people. The preaching of the gospel is to the end of discipling people. If preaching the gospel only to make converts was the end of it all, we would go nowhere. So discipleship is the core, it's the focus, it is the aim of what we do, is to get people to disciple. Look at what Paul says in Romans 1 verse 21 to 25. He says, For although they knew God, important point, although they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks to Him, but they became futile in their thinking, in their foolish hearts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of an immortal God to images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore God gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, to dishonoring their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator. And we so easily in our lives start serving creation. Do you know that you can worship yourself above God? That you can make yourself your God. Your finances. If your finances dictates and controls you, it decides where's your time, where's your effort, where's your energy, then finances might be your God. God says go left, but you say I can't. Money says go right. Which way will you choose? And it's something to think about. What controls you? What leads you? What is the compass of your life? So we can be our own gods and we can crown ourselves above God, and now and then Jesus can have an hour on a Sunday type of thing. We so quickly try to resolve things in our lives by using our own wisdom. We think we can do it better. Have you seen that very famous quote of being the captain of your own soul, of being the captain of your own destiny? I've seen t-shirts like that. I am, what a lie. You'll die. Okay? You can try it, but you'll die. It's like being found there on the docks at the big harbor, and there's a massive ship, and I just grab you by the collar and say, come, and I make you captain of the ship. You've never been on a boat. You've got like 100 million tons of cargo. Please go to China. Bye-bye. Close the doors. Cheers. Okay, somebody's going to die. It's doing that, this complicated life with all these challenges and Satan trying to kill you. And you think that you can steer this massive ship to the end on this narrow road. You can't. Do you understand that the enemy will use difficult situations in your life to get you to start making your own plans? And we see this a lot, that when you find yourself in a difficult situation, emotional storm that you are in, decisions that you need to make, you played with sin all your life, you made big mistakes, and you find yourself in this difficult situation, and now when you are in this situation, you start making your own plans to get out of it. And it doesn't work. When you look again at your life, you're in a deeper rut than you were. And the enemy will use these difficult situations against you to get you to start making your own very clever plans to get out of it. If you struggle with finances, Satan will tell you, don't do this. Don't go there, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did God really say? Did God really say that? And when we find ourselves in these difficult situations, most of the times, the difficult choice to make is usually the right one. There's always an easy way out. There's always a kortpad. Always. The enemy will always create a door out. It's funny, when I used to still drink and when I didn't know Jesus. I knew Jesus, but I chose not to follow him. I didn't have money for most of my student life, but somehow, I always had money for alcohol. It just came to me. I just had it all the time. We were drunk all the time. It's as if Satan just opens the door of the bottle store and says, I've got you now, so welcome in. Have what you want. It's funny how he supplies what you need when it fits his plan for you. And so difficult situations, you need to be very vigilant in what you decide to do. And sometimes in that choices that we make, the wrong choices, we will find ourselves very soon in the same problem, going through the same emotions, hurting and rejecting ourselves again. And I truly say that about myself. When I was 14 when I first met Jesus. And from there, it took me about 10 years to stop putting myself through hell. Because I said, yes, Jesus, he saved me, but I didn't choose to follow him. There's a difference. Yes. And you can be saved today and live through hell for the rest of your life because you do not follow the commands of his word. The guidance that he gives us through his word. And so you can form the word to fit your analogy and fit your needs and what you want to do, but it will end in disaster. We always want to play God, but we need to crucify our flesh daily. Colossians 3 verse 5 says, put to death therefore what is earthly in you. Put to death therefore what is earthly in you. Sexual immorality, impurity, passions, evil desires, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Idolatry, people. That is a short list. You know that the list of things that you can idolize is quite long. Gaming through the night, guys. Movies, series, alcohol, screen time. You name it. You know it. I'm not here to tell you what you do wrong. You know. But put to death, therefore, that which is earthly in you. And on account of these, the wrath of God is coming. On these you too once walked when you were living in them. But now you must put them all away. How is it that you call yourself a son of God, a daughter of God, but you still keep on doing the same things that you did before you knew him? And he says, but now you must put them all away. Anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth. What comes out of your mouth all the time? But we always want to play God. But we need to crucify that which is earthly in us. What did God do when the people didn't listen at the Tower of Babel? Now, before I read you that part, I want to read you two parts of Scripture. The first one is Genesis 9 verse 1 and 9 verse 7. And it says, and God blessed Noah. Remember, they just came out of the ark, fresh earth, they survived. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Verse 7, and you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth and multiply in it. Man, God is serious about multiplying. And we see it in Genesis 1 verse 8 on the first page. Exactly the same words. Multiply and fill the earth and have dominion over the fish in the sea, of the creeping creatures, over everything, all of creation. He commands us. And so, this is in hockey snow. Matthew 24:37 says, "For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark, and they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." And it fits so perfectly with just this generation. And we are eating and drinking and doing all the fun stuff of life and getting married and having children and being in marriage and enjoying everything. And Jesus is nowhere to be found. And it doesn't seem evil, but he says this is what was happening in the days of Noah, just before God annihilated the whole earth. Because they lived life worshiping themselves. My holiday, my braai, my eating out with my friends, or my nothing of God. But we call ourselves sons of God. And he says, like in the days of Noah, they were unaware. And he came. It's scary. It should be scary. Nonetheless, we are back in Genesis, and he commands us to multiply. Now we can go to Genesis 11. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves. Let us be lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. God just commanded them, multiply and fill the earth. And 2 chapters later on, the human nature says, let's make a name for ourselves and build a tower, lest we be dispersed across the earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. And that basically says all evil. We will do all evil things. And God disperses the human race by confusing them, by giving them different languages. And now you find all the cultures of the world. Beautiful. God did it. God did this. But again, we see very early in the word that man wants to be God. We want to worship ourselves. We want to be known, we want to be seen, we want to be in power. And very much of serving Jesus is going to cost you to surrender serving and worshiping yourself. This weekend I went to a wedding. I married some people, and afterwards I had discussions with different people from different countries. And I spoke to a young guy from the northern side of Europe. He lives there, he grew up there, and he recently bought himself property in the Western Cape. And a very intelligent person, very educated, very wealthy, young guy. And later that evening, I stood with him on the balcony, speaking to him, and I heard his story of coming over the side, doing business in South Africa, buying property, bringing his new girlfriend aside, and he just loves South Africa. I mean, in the meantime, everybody's migrating out. And I asked him a question. I said, so what is the love? What is that thing that brings you here, that makes you fall in love with South Africa? And he was shocked for a moment. He looked at me and he said, wow, that is a very interesting question, very deep. I said, okay. And he tried to articulate what I said, and he was thinking really deep what it is, and he couldn't really give me an answer. And I said, listen, if you don't mind, I just want to, I want to tell you that I really sense and feel that God brought you to this country, that God wants to do something in your life. And that's really what I felt prophetically. God is going to do that. Nonetheless, he looks at me and he says, oh, no. I don't believe, I wrote these words. He said, your God is what you want your God to be. I don't believe in God as you believe in God. Your God can be whatever you want your God to be, but I don't believe in your God like you do. And right there, he immediately, in a sense, not aggressively, but like this, he shunned it and said, oh, no. It ripped him out of that whole beautiful moment of suggesting that God has a plan for him in South Africa. Many years ago, when I was studying as a chef, I lived with 6 Europeans in a house in Paarl, and there was two Swedish sommeliers, that's professional wine waiters, a German chef, and 2 other chefs from, I can't remember. And one day, and I was quite in a broken state, still trying to find myself, dealing with my rejection and all my stuff still. And I was reading Bible every day, and I was laying on my bed one day in my room reading Bible. And there was a guy, he was a sommelier, Nicholas. And he walked into my room as I was lying there and reading Bible, and he says, what you reading? And I looked at him and said, the Bible. And he says, what? And are you actually reading it? Do you actually believe it? And he starts laughing from his stomach. I'm not just, he laughs. He cannot believe that I believe it. This fairy tale of this Jesus. And the whole thing about them is that they do worship themselves. They do find something that they worship, and it's not God. And that's what Romans 1 says, is that they became wise in their own way, but actually they became fools, worshiping the creation rather than the Creator. And whatever it is, like in Hinduism, maybe it's the same as Hinduism. Many years ago when we started going to India, we studied Hinduism and Islam and all those things. But when we came to India with a team and we exposed them to Hinduism, living with Hindus, being on the trains with Hindus, we would come back and people are confused because, they're so beautiful. They're wonderful people. But the thing about Hinduism, what I want to focus on here, is that you can make anything your God. Any person that you idolize can be your God. Do you know they actually make actresses and singers in India their gods? They worship, like you and I worship Jesus. Some of them worship actresses, actors, and popular people. And then obviously gurus and saints and all sorts of things. And when you tell him about Jesus, he just accepts Jesus as well. Perfect, let him in. Another one. Put him there. And so it's very much like that in the liberal Western world today, that you can make your God whatever you choose to make it. And most of us don't even know that we worship that thing. And I guess money is probably the biggest one, without people knowing that. Worshipping money, worshipping their jobs, having no time for God because I'm too busy. Busy doing what? Busy making money, right? That's why you work, for money, to survive. So we worship things, and we prioritize God into our categories, and work and family and vacation and coffee and restaurants and Jesus and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And God says, listen, it's all mine. It belongs to me. You belong to me. Stop acting as if I'm not here. And Jesus calls us. We're going to end up like this liberal Western worldview in worshipping this earth if we don't save this generation. God expresses himself very clearly through the word. in who He is, who we are, and who we've become, and how we are to live our lives on the earth. There should be no confusion in your mind of what God requires from you. How many times have you heard in your life that somebody says, God says, lay down your life, pick up your cross and follow me? Who's not heard that before? Why don't we see it enough? He's very clear about what He wants from us and how we ought to live. All I'm saying is He's clear who He is. He's clear about who we become when we are inside of Him and He in us. And He's very clear in how we ought to live our lives. A life with less pain and suffering and hardship. Living in freedom with Him. Do you know what peace is? Do you have peace in your life? True peace. He can give it, and Him alone can give peace. We try and find it in the world. Jesus does call us to give up everything we have. And everything in us says no. Luke 14:33. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Jesus' words. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Matthew 10:37 says, whoever loves father and mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Now, obviously, these types of scriptures I'm reading you today aren't the general milk scriptures. It is on the solid side of things. It's not to condemn you. It's not to shun you. It is to tell you there's a better way. Because or you believe that he can do a better job than you can or not. And can I ask you, can he? Yes. Right? He can, and he does. And we see it all the time. It's not supposed to scare you. David Platt famously years ago wrote a book, Radical, and there was a little clip that went with it, and I loved it. Some of you would remember it. And I thought of that clip, and he says at one point in this clip, he says, if we form Jesus to look like us and who we want him to be, then even when we gather together and sing our praises and lift our hands, the reality is we are not worshiping the Jesus of the Bible, but we are singing and worshiping ourselves. And so if we form him and worship him in this very cuddly way and warm and fuzzy way, but there's no change in our lives, and the people around us, they don't change, and the world don't change, which we currently see, then we are not worshiping the Jesus of the Bible. We are busy worshiping ourselves in the church. And God calls us to give up everything and follow him to the very ends of the earth. Voltaire famously said, God made man in his image, and then man returned the favor. He creates us in his image, then we turn around and create him in our image. Or God's in his image. He says to you, this is life. This is how you receive life. I am the light of men. Receive me, follow my commands, and I will love you, and I will make my home inside of you. I will tabernacle inside of you. I will manifest myself to you if you follow these commands. And you say, no, wait. Change it like this. I like it like this. Too much of that. Oh, JeanLouis, too much. Time there. Saturday's mine. Sundays, okay, I'll give some. And we form God and the gospel and the word to look like us. we change everything so that His image is our image. And we are not busy being conformed into His. And we wonder why the darkness resides in our universities like it is. We wonder why, like this morning, we see a full-blown Satanist teaching theology at the University of Pretoria. Openly. Who will say something? Who will say something? Who will dare to say something about it? You wimp. You fool. What would Jesus say when He looks at us and nobody says a word? Stands up and become the lion that He called you to be. Why do you think 11 of the 12 was martyred as they were? Because they did not stand back to speak the truth of the gospel of Jesus. They stood up against Caesar. They stood up against the authorities because of truth. Last point. So we started to say, who do you want God to be? And let's end with, who does God want us to be? So we take the circumstances that Satan and ourselves create in our lives, and we try to fix them in the flesh, right? But God takes the circumstances in your life and He uses it to shape us. He's the shaper. Hy is die pottebakker. He shapes us to look like Him. Jeremiah 18:3 says, so I went down to the potter's house, and there he was working at his wheel, and the vessel he was making of clay was spoiled in the potter's hand, and he reworked it into another vessel, as it seemed good to the potter to do. And so God works with you throughout your life, and sometimes it's you that causes the stumbling, and still God forms you, and He says, no, this is not what I want, and He reforms you, and you go through seasons of hardship, and you cry out, but you said, Lord, prune me, vorm my, and maak my net soos wat U wil. But when it happens, we cry, we rebel, and we go into the flesh. You need to surrender to the process of God in your life. Then the word of the Lord came to me saying, O house of Israel, can I not do with you as this potter has done, declares the Lord? Behold, like the clay in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand, O house of Israel. Isaiah 64:8 says, but now, O Lord, you are our Father. We are the clay, and you are the potter. We are all the work of your hand. And there's something about submitting, allowing God to form you through the seasons of hardship. Do you understand that being a Christian doesn't say your life will be easy? Do you understand that being a Christian, He calls you to your cross? So we are the clay in His hands, and He decides what to do with us. Speaking about the vine, He prunes it. Have you seen it when a vine is pruned, how it drips clear water? I grew up with that every year. My father used to prune the grapes, vines, all the types of grapes, and we would stand there in the afternoon, and it would drip like rain, like it was hanging on these rails, and it would drip. It's as if it was crying. It was cut bare. All these wild branches was clipped off to the bare minimum so that it would bear much fruit. Is the process easy? Never. You cannot go and form God for who you want Him to be and think that you will bear much fruit. You have to embrace the hardship, the suffering with Him to be in glory with Him. If you avoid it and you take the shortcuts all the time, you'll never come to a place of bearing fruit. Is church easy? No, it's not. Is the process of your discipleship easy? No, it's not. Is the process of your deliverance easy? No, it's not. But it will bear much fruit. We ask, what is the best choice in the situation for me right now? Instead of asking, what is the best choice according to His will? When you find yourself in that difficult decision, in that emotional storm, you need to stop and say, Lord, what do you say should I do? What does your word say I must do right now? Because that's the right way to go. Let's end off with a prayer. Let's close our eyes, and I want you to take a moment to reflect on what I said, of how you in your life might be ducking and diving the forming that God wants to form in your life, the pruning that He wants to bring in your life. But you take the easy way out all the time. I want you to see those places in your life where it's still mine. It's still about me. And I want you to confess it before the Lord. Right there where you are in your heart, confess that before the Lord. And even for some of us that has taken back which we have already given Him years ago, give it back. Say, Lord, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I want you this morning also ask any person in this place that has never given his life to Jesus. I don't mean you've been in a church and you've said the words. I mean truly give your life. You don't have to stand, but you can. We saw so many lost people yesterday that just let themselves go into this evil world. And don't you think for a moment that the enemy can't do that with you. You need to give your life and everything you are to Him. He wants to be with you. Can we accept Jesus? Can we accept God? And can we accept the Word for who He is? Right? Accept the terms of the agreement. It's an agreement, right? It's a testament. It's as if we say, I agree, and you sign, but you don't keep to the, what's the word? To the contract. And so let's accept His agreement with us and what He expects us to do on our side of the equation.